The sun sank low over the Montana plains, bleeding gold and rose across the horizon. Dust hung in the still air, shimmering like smoke above the corral. Cattle murmured in the distance, the rhythmic thud of hooves fading into the hum of cicadas. Clara leaned against the weather-worn fence post, her hat tipped low to hide the flutter in her chest. She'd told herself she wouldn't come, that she didn't need to see him again. But the letter he'd sent had been short and sharp, just 3 words scrawled in his uneven hand: "We need talk." Now he was here, larger than life, and just as impossible to forget. Luke dismounted his horse with that same slow, deliberate grace that used to make her forget how to breathe. The stallion snorted and tossed its mane, muscles rippling in the dying light, and he patted its neck with a touch so gentle it hurt to watch. He hadn't changed much. Broad shoulders, sun-browned skin, dark hair curling damply beneath his hat. But there was something heavier about him now, a weight in his stance, in the set of his jaw. When his eyes met hers across the corral, she felt the ground tilt. "Didn't think you'd come back," she said softly, pushing off the fence, her boots crunching on dry earth. "Didn't think I'd have to." His voice carried that familiar rasp, roughened by wind and distance. "But you left me no choice." Clara crossed her arms, more to steady herself than to argue. "You sent for me. That's a choice." He studied her for a long moment, the kind of look that stripped away months, maybe years, leaving only the memory of what they used to be. Then he sighed, low and tired. "Clara, you shouldn't be here. I'm too big for you, too much trouble. Always was." The words should have made her angry, but instead they made her heart ache. He was still trying to protect her. From himself, from the storm he carried around like a second skin. "You've said that before," she murmured. "Didn't stop me then." He took a step closer. The space between them shrank, filled with the scent of leather and dust and something unmistakably him. "Things are different now," he said. "Are they?" She tilted her head, searching his eyes. "Because it feels exactly the same." Luke's mouth tightened, but his eyes betrayed him. A flicker of longing, a trace of regret. He looked away first, adjusting his gloves as if the motion could keep his hands busy, keep them from reaching for her. "Clara, this place, it's no good for you anymore. The ranch is hanging by a thread. I'm hanging by a thread." She stepped closer, close enough that her voice came out a whisper. "Then maybe I'm here to help you hold on." He let out a quiet laugh, humorless and low. "You always did think you could fix things. Maybe I just thought you were worth fixing." The words landed between them like a spark in dry grass. He froze, eyes locking on hers again, and for a second, she saw everything he was trying so hard to hide. The fear, the want, the stubborn hope that refused to die. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and the faint rumble of thunder rolling far off in the hills. Clara's hair lifted around her face, catching the light like copper flame. Luke reached out before he could stop himself, brushing a stray strand from her cheek. His fingers lingered a moment too long. "Clara." Her name in his mouth still sounded like a promise and a warning tangled together. "You know what happens if you stay," he said, voice barely above a whisper. She swallowed hard. "Maybe I do. And you're still here. Looks that way." A silence stretched between them, full of every word they'd left unsaid. The nights they'd spent apart, the arguments that had cut too deep, the tenderness that never truly left. She could feel his pulse in the air between them, steady and strong. Finally, he turned away, resting one hand on the fence rail, staring out at the wide, open sky. "You've got a life somewhere else. You should go live it." She watched him, the lines in his face carved deeper by years of hard work and harder choices. And still, despite everything, her heart refused to listen. I tried, she said quietly. But every time I looked west, I saw this place. I saw you. Luke closed his eyes, the muscle in his jaw tightening. When he opened them again, they shone with something raw and unguarded. You're playing with fire. Maybe, she said, stepping beside him. But fires never scared me. The thunder cracked closer now, echoing across the plains. Neither of them moved. The storm was coming, outside and in, and both knew there was no stopping it this time. The first drop of rain landed on Clara's cheek, cool against the warmth of her skin. Then another, then 10 more, a soft patter that soon grew into a steady drumming on the tin roof of the barn behind them. Luke didn't move at first. He stood there, hat low, shoulders tense, as though if he stayed perfectly still the storm might pass without touching him. But storms never worked that way. Not here, not between them. Come inside, Clara said, her voice barely audible over the wind. He hesitated, but she was already pushing the barn door open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air was thick with hay and horse sweat and memory. Lightning flashed through the gaps in the wooden slats, carving brief silver shapes of them both. Two people caught between what was safe and what was right. Luke hung up his hat and wiped the rain from his brow. You shouldn't have come back, he said again, but softer this time. Almost pleading. And yet, she replied, smiling faintly, here I am. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed, filled with the sound of the storm, the beating of their hearts, and the ache of all the words that refused to be said. He turned to face her. His shirt was damp from the rain, clinging to his chest, the faint scent of leather rising with every breath. His eyes found hers, and for a long, suspended moment, she saw something shift, the wall he'd built around himself cracking at the edges. Why do you do this? He asked. Why do you keep pushing when I'm trying to keep you safe? Because I stopped believing you needed to protect me, she said softly. What I needed was for you to stay. Luke took a slow breath, his jaw tightening. You think it was easy for me to let you go. I think it was easier than staying and fighting for me. The words hit their mark. He looked away, shoulders curving inward as though bracing against the truth. For a moment neither spoke. Rain hammered on the roof, thunder rolling through the valley like a drumbeat. Then, almost without realizing it, Clara stepped forward. Luke, she whispered, look at me. When he did, she saw every emotion he'd tried to bury. Guilt, desire, fear, longing. All tangled together. I'm too big for you, he said again, voice rough. Too rough around the edges. Too set in my ways. Maybe, she said, closing the distance between them, but that's never scared me either. He exhaled a shaky laugh, disbelief flickering in his eyes. You have no idea what you're asking for. She rose onto her toes, close enough that her breath mingled with his. Then show me, she whispered. Show me what it is I don't understand. Her words hung there. Soft, dangerous, electric. Luke's hand twitched at his side. He wanted to touch her, but years of restraint held him back. Then lightning cracked again, and the barn filled with white light. In that instant he reached for her. Just her hand, nothing more, but even that simple contact felt like fire. Clara didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped closer, until her chest brushed his. You're still holding back, she said, her voice trembling. Because if I don't, I might not stop, he murmured. Then don't. The air between them throbbed with everything unsaid. He could feel the warmth of her breath, the rapid beat of her pulse against his palm. His thumb brushed the inside of her wrist, and she shivered. "Clara," he warned, "one last time. Try me anyway," she said. And with that, the space between them vanished. No words, no explanations, just the crash of thunder and the feel of her in his arms. It wasn't wild or hurried. It was desperate in a quiet way, as if they'd both been holding their breath for years. He rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed. "You don't know how long I've wanted this." "I think I do," she whispered back. "I never stopped wanting it either." The rain beat harder, but neither cared. Time folded in on itself. The years apart, the hurt, the longing, all dissolving into the present moment. When they finally pulled apart, it wasn't out of regret but out of need to breathe. Luke's gaze softened. "You still planning to stay?" She smiled through the shimmer of tears. "If you'll let me." He chuckled, low and disbelieving, brushing a thumb along her cheek. "Darlin', letting you go was the worst thing I ever did. I'm not about to make that mistake twice." Outside, the storm began to ease, the rain softening to a whisper. The scent of wet earth filled the air, a promise of new beginnings. They stood there for a while, listening to the quiet, neither daring to move first. Then Clara leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her as if anchoring them both. For the first time in years, the silence between them didn't ache. It felt like peace.